for the county in which the farm is situated, or to determine pursuant to Section 1113C. 8. Treatment of new owners. In the case of a farm for which the owner on the date of enactment of this subsection was not the owner for the 2019 through 2023 crop years, the Secretary shall use the planting history of the prior owner or owners of that farm for the purposes of determining A, eligibility under paragraph 3, B, eligibility acres under paragraph 4, and C, the allocation of acres under paragraph 5. Section 10303, producer election. A, in general section 1115 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9015 is amended 1, in subsection A, in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 2, in subsection C, A, in the matter preceding paragraph 1, I, by striking crop year or and inserting crop year, and 2, by inserting or the 2026 crop year after 2019 crop year. B, in paragraph 1, I, by striking crop year or and inserting crop year, and II, by inserting or the 2026 crop year after 2019 crop year, and C, in paragraph 2, I, in subparagraph A, by striking and at the end, II, in subparagraph B, by striking the period at the end and inserting and 3, by adding at the end the following. C, the same coverage for each covered commodity on the farm for the 2027 through 2031 crop years as was applicable for the 2025 crop year, and 3, by adding at the end the following. 1, higher of price loss coverage payments and agricultural risk coverage payments. For the 2025 crop year, the Secretary shall, on a covered commodity by covered commodity basis, make the higher of price loss coverage payments under Section 1116 and agricultural risk covered county coverage payments under Section 1117 to the producers on a farm for the payment acres for each covered commodity on the farm. B, federal crop insurance supplemental coverage options. Section 508C4C 4 IV of the Federal Crop Insurance Act 7 U.S.C. 1508 C4C IV is amended by striking crops for which the producer has elected under Section 1116 of the Agricultural Act of 2014 to receive agricultural risk coverage in acres and inserting acres. Section 10304 price loss coverage. Section 1116 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9016 is amended. 1, in subsection A2, in the matter preceding subparagraph A by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 2, in subsection C1B, A, in the subparagraph heading by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. And B, in the matter preceding clause I by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 3, in subsection D, in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2025 and inserting 2031, and 4, in subsection G, A, by striking subparagraph F of section 1111-19 and inserting paragraph 19A VI of section 1111, and B, by striking 2012 through 2016, each place it appears, and inserting 2017 through 2021. Section 10305, agricultural risk coverage. Section 1117 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9017 is amended 1, in subsection A, in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 2, in subsection C, A, in paragraph 1 by inserting for each of the 2014 through 2024 crop years and 90% of the benchmark revenue for each of the 2025 through 2031 crop years before the period at the end. B, by striking 2023, each place it appears, and inserting 2031. And C, in paragraph 4B, in the subparagraph heading, by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 3, in subsection D1, by striking subparagraph B and inserting the following. BI, for each of the 2014 through 2024 crop years, 10% of the benchmark revenue for the crop year applicable under subsection C and II. For each of the 2025 through 2031 crop years, 12% of the benchmark revenue for the crop year applicable under subsection C and 4 in subsections E, G5, and I5 by striking 2023, each place it appears, and inserting 2031. Section 10.306, equitable treatment of certain entities. A, in general, Section 1001 of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308, is amended 1 in subsection A, by redesignated paragraph 5 as paragraph 6, and B, by inserting after paragraph 4 the following. 5, qualified pass-through entity. The term qualified pass-through entity means A, a partnership within the meaning of subchapter K of Chapter 1 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, B, an S corporation as defined in Section 1361 of that code, C, a limited liability company that does not affirmatively elect to be treated as a corporation, and D, a joint venture or general partnership. 2, in subsections B and C, by striking except a joint venture or general partnership, each place it appears, and inserting except a qualified pass-through entity, and 3, in subsection D, by striking subtitle B of Title I of the Agricultural Act of 2014, or B, attribution of payment, Section 1001 E3 BII of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308 E3 BII is amended. 1, in the clause heading by striking joint ventures and general partnerships and inserting qualified pass-through entities. 2, by striking a joint venture or a general partnership and inserting a qualified pass-through entity. 3, by striking joint ventures and general partnerships and inserting qualified pass-through entities. And 4, by striking the joint venture or general partnership and inserting the qualified pass-through entity. C, persons actively engaged in farming. Section 1001 AB2 of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308 1B2 is amended. 1, subparagraphs A and B, by striking a general partnership, a participant in a joint venture, each place it appears, and inserting a qualified pass-through entity. And 2, in subparagraph C, by striking a general partnership, joint venture, or similar entity, and inserting a qualified pass-through entity or a similar entity. D, joint and several liability. Section 100BD of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308-2D is amended by striking partnerships and joint ventures and inserting qualified pass-through entities. E, exclusion from AGI calculation. Section 1001D of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308-3AD is amended by striking general partnership or joint venture, each place it appears. Section 10.307, payment limitations. Section 1001 of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308 is amended 1 in subsection B, A, by striking the and inserting subject to subsection I, the, and B, by striking $125,000 and inserting $155,000. And 2, in subsection C, A, by striking the and inserting subject to subsection I, the, and B, by striking $125,000 and inserting $155,000. And 3, by adding at the end the following. I, adjustment for the 2025 crop year and each crop year thereafter. The Secretary shall annually adjust the amounts described in subsections B and C for inflation based on the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics of the Department of Labor. Section 10.308, adjusted gross income limitation. Section 1001DB of the Food Security Act of 1985, 7 U.S.C. 1308-3AB is amended 1 in paragraph 1 by striking paragraph 3 and inserting paragraphs 3 and 4, and 2 by adding at the end the following. 4, exception for certain operations. A, definitions. In this paragraph, I, accepts payment or benefit. The term accepted payment or benefit means I, a payment or benefit under subtitle E of Title I of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 908 at sequence. 2, a payment or benefit under Section 196 of the Federal Agricultural Improvement and Reform Act of 1996, 7 U.S.C. 7333, and 3, a payment or benefit described in paragraph 2C received on or after October 1st, 2024. I, farming, ranching, or Silviculture activities. The term farming, ranching, or silviculture activities include agritourism, direct-to-consumer marketing of agricultural products, the sale of agricultural equipment owned by the person or legal entity, and other agricultural-related activities as determined by the Secretary. B, exception. In the case of an accepted payment or benefit, the limitation established by paragraph 1 shall not apply to a person or legal entity during a crop, fiscal, or program year as appropriate, if greater than or equal to 75% of the average gross income of the person or legal entity derives from farming, ranching, or silviculture activities. Section 10309, marketing loans. A, availability of non-recourse marketing assistance loans for loan commodities. Section 1201B1 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9031B1 is amended by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. B, loan rates for non-recourse marketing assistance loans. Section 1202 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9032 is amended 1 in subsection B. A, in the subsection heading by striking 2023 and inserting 2025, and B, in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2023 and inserting 2025. 2, by redesignating subsections C and D as subsections D and E respectively. 3, by inserting after subsection B the following. C, 2026 through 2031 crop years. For the purposes of each of the 2026 through 2031 crop years, the loan rate for a marketing assistance loan under Section 1201 for a loan commodity shall be equal to the following. 1, in the case of wheat, $3.72 per bushel. In the case of corn, $2.42 per bushel. In the case of grain sorghum, $2.42 per bushel. 4, in the case of barley, $2.75 per bushel. 5, in the case of oats, $2.20 per bushel. 6, in the case of upland cotton, 55 cents per pound. 7, in the case of extra long staple cotton, $1 per pound. In the case of long grain rice, $7.70 per hundredweight. 9, in the case of medium grain rice, $7.70 per hundredweight. 10, in the case of soybeans, $6.82 per bushel. 11, in the case of other oil seeds, $11.10 per hundredweight for each of the following kinds of oil seeds. A, sunflower seed. B, rapeseed. C, canola. D, safflower. E, flaxseed. F, mustard seed. G, cranberry. H, sesame seeds. I, other oil seeds designated by the Secretary. 12, in the case of dry peas, $6.87 per hundredweight. 13, in the case of lentils, $14.30 per hundredweight. 14, in the case of small chickpeas, $11 per hundredweight. 15, in the case of large chickpeas, $15.40 per hundredweight. 16, in the case of grated wool, $1.60 per pound. 17, in the case of non-grated wool, 55 cents per pound. 18, in the case of mohair, $5 per pound. 19, in the case of honey, $1.50 per pound. 20, in the case of peanuts, $390 per ton. 4, in subsection D, as so redesignated by striking A11 and B11 and inserting A11, B11, and C11, and 5, in subsection E, as so redesignated in paragraph 1 by striking 25 cents and inserting 30 cents. C, payment of cotton storage costs. Section 1204G of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9034G is amended 1 by striking effective and inserting the following. 1, crop years 2014 through 2025, effective. 2, in paragraph 1, as so designated by striking 2023 and inserting 2025. And 3, by adding at the end the following. 2, payment of cotton storage costs effective for each of the 2026 through 2031 crop years. The Secretary shall make cotton storage payments for upland cotton and extra long staple cotton available in the same manner as the Secretary provided storage payments for the 2006 crop of upland cotton, except that the payment rate shall be equal to the lesser of A, the submitted storage charge for the current marketing year, and B, in the case of storage in I, California or Arizona, a payment rate of $4.90, and 2, II, any other state, a payment rate of $3. D, loan deficiency payments. 1, continuation. Section 1205A2B of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9035A2B is amended by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 2, payments in lieu of LDPS. Section 1206 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9036 is amended in subsections A and D by striking 2023, each place it appears, and inserting 2031. E, special competitive provisions for extra long staple cotton. Section 1208A of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9038A is amended in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2026 and inserting 2032. F, availability of recourse loans. Section 1209 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9039 is amended in subsections A, 2, B, and C by striking 2023 each place it appears and inserting 2031. Section 310, repayment of marketing loans. Section 1204 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9034 is amended 1 in subsection B, A, by redesignating paragraph 1 as subparagraph A and indenting appropriately. B, in the matter preceding subparagraph A as so redesignated by striking the Secretary and inserting the following. 1, in general, the Secretary, and C, by striking paragraph 2 and inserting the following. BI, in the case of long grain rice and medium grain rice, the prevailing world market price for the commodity as determined and adjusted by the Secretary in accordance with this section, or II, in the case of upland cotton, the prevailing world market price for the commodity as determined and adjusted by the Secretary in accordance with this section. 2, refund for upland cotton. In the case of repayment for a marketing assistance loan for upland cotton at a rate described in paragraph 1 BII, the Secretary shall provide the producer a refund, if any, in an amount equal to the difference between the lowest prevailing world market price as determined and adjusted by the Secretary in accordance with this section during the 30-day period following the date on which the producer repays the marketing assistance loan, and the repayment rate. 2, in subsection C, A, by striking the period at the end and inserting semicolon and. B, by striking at the loan rate and inserting the following, at a rate that is lesser of 1, the loan rate, and C, by adding at the end the following. 2, the prevailing world market price for the commodity as determined and adjusted by the Secretary in accordance with this section. 3, subsection D, A, in paragraph 1 by striking and medium grain rice and inserting medium grain rice and extra long staple cotton. B, by redesignating paragraphs 1 and 2 as subparagraphs A and B respectively and indenting appropriately. C, in the matter preceding subparagraph A as so redesignated by striking for purposes and inserting the following. 1, in general, for purposes, and D, by adding at the end the following. 2, upland cotton. In the case of upland cotton, for any period when price quotations for middling M 3/32-inch cotton are available, the formula under paragraph 1A shall be based on the average of the 3 lowest price growths that are quoted. And 4, in subsection E, A, in the subsection heading by inserting extra long staple cotton and upland cotton. B, in paragraph 2, I, in the paragraph heading by inserting upland before cotton, and 2 in subparagraph, and II in subparagraph B, in the matter preceding clause I by striking 2024 and inserting 2032. C, by redesignating paragraph 3 as paragraph 4, and D, by inserting after paragraph 2 the following. 3, extra long staple cotton. The prevailing world market price for extra long staple cotton determined under subsection D, A, shall be adjusted to United States quality and location, with the adjustment to include the average cost to market the commodity, including average transportation cost, as determined by the Secretary, and B, may be further adjusted during the period beginning on the date of enactment of the Act entitled An Act to Provide for Reconciliation pursuant to Title II of H. Con. Res. 14, 119th Congress, and ending on July 31st, 2032. If the Secretary determines the adjustment is necessary, I, to minimize potential loan forfeitures, I, to minimize the accumulation of stocks of extra long staple cotton by the federal government, I, to ensure that extra long staple cotton produced in the United States can be marketed freely and competitively, and IV, to ensure an appropriate transition between current crop and forward crop price quotations, except that the Secretary may use forward crop price quotations prior to July 31st of a marketing year only if I, there are insufficient current crop price quotations, and I, the forward crop price quotation is the lowest such quotation available. Section 10.311, Economic Adjustment Assistance for Textile Mills. Section 1207C of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9037C is amended by striking paragraph 2 and inserting the following. 2, value of assistance. The value of the assistance provided under paragraph 1 shall be A for the period beginning on August 1st, 2013 and ending on July 31st, 2025, 3 cents per pound, and B, beginning on August 1st, 2025, 5 cents per pound. Section 10312, sugar program updates. A, loan rate modification. Section 156 of the Federal Agricultural Improvement and Reform Act of 1996, 7 U.S.C. 7272 is amended 1 in subsection A in paragraph 4 by striking and at the end, B in paragraph 5 by striking 2023 crop years and inserting 2024 crop years, and C by adding at the end the following. 6, 24 cents per pound for raw cane sugar for each of the 2025 through 2031 crop years. 2, in subsection B-A in paragraph 1 by striking and at the end, B in paragraph 2 by striking 2023 crop years and inserting 2024 crop years, and C by adding at the end the following. 3, a rate that is equal to 136.55% of the loan rate per pound of raw cane sugar under subsection A6 for each of the 2025 through 2031 crop years. And 3, in subsection I by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. B, adjustments to Commodity Credit Corporation storage rates. Section 167 of the Federal Agricultural Improvement and Reform Act of 1996, 7 U.S.C. 7287 is amended 1 by striking subsection A and inserting the following. A, in general, for the 2025 crop year and each subsequent crop year, the Commodity Credit Corporation shall establish rates for the storage of forfeited sugar in an amount that is not less than 1. In the case of refined sugar, 34 cents per hundredweight per month, and 2. In the case of raw cane sugar, 27 cents per hundredweight per month, and 2. In subsection B, A in the subsection heading by striking subsequent and inserting prior, and B by striking and subsequent and inserting through 2024. C, modernization beet sugar allotments. 1, sugar estimates. Section 359BA1 of the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359BBA1 is amended by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. 2, allocation to the processors. Section 359CG2 of the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359CCG2 is amended A by striking in the case and inserting the following. A, in general, except as provided in subparagraph B in the case, and B by adding at the end the following. B, exception. If the Secretary makes an upward adjustment of paragraph 1A in adjusting allocations among beet sugar processors, the Secretary shall give priority to beet sugar processors with available sugar. 3, timing of reassignment. Section 359EB2 of the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359EEB2 is amended A by redesignating subparagraphs A through C as clauses I through III, respectively, and indenting appropriately. B, in the matter preceding clauses I as so redesignated by striking if the Secretary and inserting the following. A, in general, if the Secretary, and C by adding at the end the following. B, timing. In carrying out subparagraph A, the Secretary shall I make an initial determination based on the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates approved by the World Agricultural Outlook Board for January that shall be applicable to the crop year for which allotments are required, and II provide for an initial reassignment under subparagraph AI not later than 30 days after the date on which the World Agricultural Supply and Demand estimates described in Clause I is released. D, reallocations of tariff rate quota shortfall. Section 359K of the Agricultural Adjustment
Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359KK is amended by adding at the end the following. C, reallocation. 1, initial reallocation. Subject to paragraph 3, following the establishment of the tariff rate quotas under subsection A for a quota year, the Secretary shall, A, determine which countries do not intend to fulfill their allocation for the quota year, and B, reallocate any forecasted shortfall in the fulfillment of the tariff rate quotas as soon as practicable. 2, subsequent reallocation. Subject to paragraph 3, not later than March 1 of a quota year, the Secretary shall reallocate any additional forecasted shortfall in the fulfillment of the tariff rate quotas for raw cane sugar established under subsection A1 for that quota year. 3. Cessation of effectiveness. Paragraphs 1 and 2 shall cease to be in effect if A, the agreement suspending the countervailing duty investigation on sugar from Mexico, signed December 19, 2014, is terminated, and B, no countervailing duty order under Subtitle A of Title VII of the Tariff Act of 1930, 19 U.S.C. 1671 et sequitur, is in effect with respect to sugar from Mexico. D, refined sugar. 1, definition of domestic sugar industry. In this subsection, the term domestic sugar industry means domestic A, sugar beet producers and processors, B, producers and processors of sugar cane, and C, refiners of raw cane sugar. 2, study required. A, in general, not later than 180 days after the date of enactment of this subsection, the Secretary shall conduct a study on whether the establishment of additional terms and conditions with respect to refined sugar imports is necessary and appropriate. B, elements. In conducting the study under subparagraph A, the Secretary shall examine the following. I, the need for 1, defining refined sugar as having a minimum polarization of 99.8 degrees or higher. 2, establishing a standard for color or reflectance-based units for refined sugar such as those utilized by the International Commission on Uniform Methods of Sugar Analysis. 3, prescribing specifications for packaging type for refined sugar. 4, prescribing specifications for transportation modes for refined sugar. 5, requiring evidence that sugar imported as refined sugar will not undergo further refining in the United States. 6, prescribing appropriate terms and conditions to avoid unlawful sugar imports. And 7, establishing other definitions, terms, and conditions or other requirements. II, the potential impact of modifications described in each of the subclauses 1 through 7 of Clause I of the domestic sugar industry. III, whether based on the needs described in Clause I and the impact described in Clause II, the establishment of additional terms and conditions is appropriate. C, consultation. In conducting the study under subparagraph A, the Secretary shall consult with representatives of the domestic sugar industry and users of refined sugar. D, report. Not later than 1 year after the date of enactment of this subsection, the Secretary shall submit to the Committee on Agriculture of the House of Representatives and the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry of the Senate a report that describes the findings of the study conducted under subparagraph A. 3, establishment of additional terms and conditions permitted. A, in general, based on the findings in the report submitted under paragraph 2D, and after providing notice to the Committee on Agriculture of the House of Representatives and the Committee on Agriculture, Nutrition, and Forestry of the Senate, the Secretary may issue regulations in accordance with subparagraph B to establish additional terms and conditions with respect to refined sugar imports that are necessary and appropriate. B, promulgation of regulations. The Secretary may issue regulations under subparagraph A if the regulations, 1, do not have an adverse impact on the domestic sugar industry, and 2, are consistent with the requirements of this part, Section 156 of the Federal Agriculture Improvement and Reform Act of 1996, 7 U.S.C. 7272, and obligations under international trade agreements that have been approved by Congress. E, clarification of tariff rate quota adjustments. Section 359KB1 of the Agriculture Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359KKB1 is amended in the matter preceding subparagraph A by striking "if there is N" and inserting "for the sole purpose of responding directly to N." F, period of effectiveness. Section 359LA of the Agriculture Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359 LLA, is amended by striking 2023 and inserting 2031. Section 10313, Dairy Policy Updates. A, Dairy Margin Coverage Production History. 1, Definition. Section 14018 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9051-8, is amended by striking when the participating dairy operation first registers to participate in dairy margin coverage. 2, Production history of participating dairy operations. Section 1405 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9055 is amended by striking subsections A and B and inserting the following. A, Production history. Except as provided under subsection B, the production history of a dairy operation for dairy margin coverage is equal to the highest annual milk marketings of the participating dairy operation during any one of the 2021, 2022, or 2023 calendar years. B, election by new dairy operations. In the case of a participating dairy operation that has been in operation for less than a year, the participating dairy operations shall elect one of the following methods for the Secretary to determine the production history of the participating dairy operation. 1, the volume of the actual milk marketings for the months the participating dairy operation has been in operation extrapolated to a yearly amount. 2, an estimate of the actual milk marketings of the participating dairy operation based on the herd size of the participating dairy operation relative to the national rolling herd average data published by the Secretary. B, dairy margin coverage payments. Section 1406A1C of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9056A1C, is amended by striking $5 million each place it appears and inserting $6 million. C, premiums for dairy margins. 1, Tier 1. Section 1407B of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9057B is amended. A, in the subsection heading by striking $5 million and inserting $6 million, and B, in paragraph 1 by striking $5 million and inserting $6 million. 2, Tier 2. Section 1407C of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9057C, is amended. A, in the subsection heading by striking $5 million and inserting $6 million, and B, in paragraph 1 by striking $5 million and inserting $6 million. 3, premium discounts. Section 1407G of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9057G, is amended. A, in paragraph 1 by striking 2019 through 2023 and inserting 2026 through 2031, and 2, by striking January 2019 and inserting January 2026, and B, in paragraph 2 by striking 2023 each place it appears and inserting 2031. D, duration. Section 1409 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9059, is amended by striking 2025 and inserting 2031. Section 10314, implementation. Section 1614C of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9097C, is amended by adding at the end the following. 5, further funding. The Secretary shall make available to carry out Subtitle C of Title I of the Act entitled An Act to Provide for Reconciliation Pursuant to Title II of H. Con. Res. 14, 119th Congress, and the amendments made by that subtitle, $50 million to remain available until expended, of which, A, not less than $5 million shall be used to carry out paragraphs 3 and 4 of subsection B. B, $3 million shall be used for activities described in paragraph 3A. C, $3 million shall be used for activities described in paragraph 3B. D, $9 million shall be used, 1, to carry out mandatory surveys of dairy production costs and product yield information to be reported by manufacturers required to report under Section 273 of the Agricultural Marketing Act of 1946, 7 U.S.C. 1637b, for all products processed in the same facility or facilities, and 2, to publish the results of such surveys biennially, and E, $1 million shall be used to conduct the study under subsection D of Section 359K of the Agricultural Adjustment Act of 1938, 7 U.S.C. 1359KK. Subtitle D, Disaster Assistance Programs. Section 10401, Supplemental Agricultural Disaster Assistance. A, Livestock Indemnity Payments. Section 1501B of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9081B is amended, 1, by striking paragraph 2 and inserting the following. 2, payment rates. A, losses due to predation. Indemnity payments to an eligible producer on a farm under paragraph 1A shall be made at a rate of 100% of the market value of the affected livestock on the applicable date as determined by the Secretary. B, losses due to adverse weather or disease. Indemnity payments to an eligible producer on a farm under subparagraph B or C of paragraph 1 shall be made at a rate of 75% of the market value of the affected livestock on the applicable date as determined by the Secretary. C, determination of market value. In determining the market value described in subparagraphs A and B, the Secretary may consider the ability of eligible producers to document regional price premiums for affected livestock that exceed the national average market price for those livestock. D, applicable date defined. In this paragraph, the term applicable date means, with respect to livestock, as applicable, 1, the day before the date of death of the livestock, or 2, the day before the date of the event that caused the harm of the livestock to the livestock that resulted in a reduced sale price, and 2, by adding at the end the following. 5, additional payment for unborn livestock. A, in general, in the case of unborn livestock death losses incurred on or after January 1, 2024, the Secretary shall make an additional payment to eligible producers on farms that have incurred such losses in excess of the normal mortality due to a condition specified in paragraph 1. B, payment rate. Additional payments under subparagraph A shall be made at a rate, 1, determined by the Secretary, and 2, less than or equal to 85% of the payment rate established with respect to the lowest weight class of the livestock, as determined by the Secretary, acting through the administrator of the Farm Service Agency. C, payment amount. The amount of a payment to an eligible producer that has incurred unborn livestock death losses shall be equal to the payment rate determined under subparagraph B multiplied in the case of livestock described in 1, subparagraph A, B, or F of subsection A4 by 1, 2, subparagraph D of each subsection by 2, 3, subparagraph E of each subsection by 12, and 4, subparagraph G of such subsection by the average number of birthed animals for one gestation cycle for the species of such livestock as determined by the Secretary. D, unborn livestock death losses defined. In this paragraph, the term unborn livestock death losses means losses of any livestock described in subparagraph A, B, D, E, F, or G of subsection A4 that was gestating on the date of the death of the livestock. B, Livestock Forage Disaster Program. Section 1501 C3D21 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9081 C3D21 is amended. 1, by striking 1 monthly payment and inserting 2 monthly payments. And 2, by striking county for at least 8 consecutive and inserting the following: county for not less than AA, 4 consecutive weeks during the normal grazing period for the county, as determined by the Secretary, shall be eligible to receive assistance under this paragraph in an amount equal to 1 monthly payment using the monthly payment rate determined under subparagraph B or BB, 7 of the previous 8 consecutive. C, emergency assistance for livestock, honeybees, and farm-raised fish. 1, in general, Section 1501D of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9081D, is amended by adding at the end the following. 5, assistance for losses due to bird depredation. A, definition of farm-raised fish. In this paragraph, the term farm-raised fish means fish propagated and reared in a controlled freshwater environment. B, payments. Eligible producers of farm-raised fish, including fish grown as food for human consumption, shall be eligible to receive payments under this subsection to aid in the reduction of losses due to piscivorous birds. C, payment rate. 1, in general, the payment rate for payments under subparagraph B shall be determined by the Secretary, taking into account 1, costs associated with the deterrence of piscivorous birds. 2, the value of lost fish and revenue due to bird depredation. And 3, costs associated with disease loss from bird depredation. 2, minimum rate. The payment rate for payments under subparagraph B shall be not less than $600 per acre of farm-raised fish. D, payment amount. The amount of a payment under subparagraph B shall be the product obtained by multiplying 1, the applicable payment rate under subparagraph C, and 2, 85% of the total number of acres of farm-raised fish that the eligible producer has in production for the calendar year. 2, emergency assistance for honeybees. In determining honeybee colony losses eligible for assistance under Section 1501D of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9081D, the Secretary shall utilize a normal mortality rate of 15%. D, Tree Assistance Program. Section 1501E of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 9081E, is amended, 1, in paragraph 2B by striking 15%, adjusted for normal mortality, and inserting normal mortality, and 2, in paragraph 3, A, in subparagraph A1 by striking 15% mortality, adjusted for normal mortality, and inserting normal mortality, and B, in subparagraph B, 1, by striking 50 and inserting 65, and 2, by striking 15% damage or mortality, adjusted for normal tree damage and mortality, and inserting normal tree damage or mortality. Subtitle E, Crop Insurance. Section 10501, Beginning Farmer and Rancher Benefit. A, definitions. 1, in general, Section 502B3 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1502B3, is amended by striking 5 and inserting 10. 2, conforming amendment. Section 522C7 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1522C7, is amended by striking subparagraph F. B, increase in assistance. Section 508E of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1508E, is amended by adding at the end the following. 9, additional support. A, in general, in addition to any other provision of this subsection, except paragraph 2A regarding payment of a portion of premiums, a beginning farmer or rancher shall receive additional premium assistance that is the number of percentage points specified in subparagraph B greater than the premium assistance that would otherwise be available for the applicable policy, plan of insurance, and coverage level selected by the beginning farmer or rancher. B, percentage points adjustments. The percentage points referred to in subparagraph A are the following. 1, for each of the first and second reinsurance years that a beginning farmer or rancher participates as a beginning farmer or rancher in the applicable policy or plan of insurance, 5 percentage points. 2, for the third reinsurance year that a beginning farmer or rancher participates as a beginning farmer or rancher in the applicable policy or plan of insurance, 3 percentage points. 3, for the fourth reinsurance year that a beginning farmer or rancher participates as a beginning farmer or rancher in the applicable policy or plan of insurance, 1 percentage point. Section 10502, area-based crop insurance coverage and affordability. A, coverage level. Section 508C4 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1508C4 is amended, 1, in subparagraph A by striking Clause 2 and inserting the following. 2, may be purchased at any level not to exceed 1, in the case of the individual yield or revenue coverage, 85%. 2, in the case of individual yield or revenue coverage aggregated across multiple commodities, 90%. And 3, in the case of area yield or revenue coverage as determined by the corporation, 95%. And 2, in subparagraph C. A, in Clause 2 by striking 14 and inserting 10. And B, in Clause 3.1 by striking 86 and inserting 90. B, premium subsidy. Section 508E2H1 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1508E2H1, is amended by striking 65 and inserting 80. Section 10503, administrative and operating expense adjustments. Section 508K of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1508K, is amended by adding at the end the following. 10, additional expenses. A, in general, beginning with the 2026 reinsurance year and for each reinsurance year thereafter, in addition to the terms and conditions of the standard reinsurance agreement, to cover additional expenses for loss adjustment procedures, the corporation shall pay an additional administrative and operating expense subsidy to approved insurance providers for eligible contracts. B, payment amount. In the case of an eligible contract, the payment to an approved insurance provider required under subparagraph A shall be the amount equal to 6% of the net book premium. C, definitions. In this paragraph, 1, eligible contract. The term eligible contract, 1, means a crop insurance contract entered into by an approved insurance provider in an eligible state, and 2, does not include a contract for AA, catastrophic risk protection under subsection B, BB, an area-based plan of insurance or similar plan of insurance as determined by the corporation, or CC, a policy under which an approved insurance provider does not incur loss adjustment expenses as determined by the corporation. 2, eligible state. The term eligible state means a state in which, with respect to an insurance year, the loss ratio for eligible contracts is greater than 120% of the total net book premium written by all approved insurance providers. 11, specialty crops. A, minimum reimbursement. Beginning with the 2026 reinsurance year and for each reinsurance year thereafter, the rate of reimbursement to approved insurance providers and agents for administrative and operating expenses with respect to crop insurance contracts covering agricultural commodities described in Section 101 of the Specialty Crops Competitiveness Act of 2004, 7 U.S.C. 1621 Note, Public Law 108-465, shall be equal to or greater than the percentage that is the greater of the following. 1, 17% of the premium used to define loss ratio. 2, the percent of the premium used to define loss ratio that is otherwise applicable for the reinsurance year under the terms of the standard reinsurance agreement in effect for the reinsurance year. B, other contracts. In carrying out subparagraph A, the corporation shall not reduce, with respect to any reinsurance year, the amount or the rate of reimbursement to approved insurance providers and agents under the standard reinsurance agreement described in Clause 2 of such subparagraph for administrative and operating expenses with respect to contracts covering agricultural commodities that are not subject to such subparagraph. C, administration. The requirements of this paragraph and the adjustments made pursuant to this paragraph shall not be considered a renegotiation under paragraph 8A. 12, A&O inflation adjustment. In general, subject to subparagraph B, beginning with the 2026 reinsurance year and for each reinsurance year thereafter, the corporation shall increase the total administrative and operating expense reimbursements otherwise required under the standard reinsurance agreement in effect for the reinsurance year in order to account for inflation in a manner consistent with the increases provided with respect to the 2011 through 2015 reinsurance years under the enclosure included in Risk Management Agency Bulletin numbered MGR 10007 and dated June 30, 2010. B, special rule for 2026 reinsurance year. The increase under subparagraph A for the 2026 reinsurance year shall not exceed the percentage change for the preceding reinsurance year included in the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers published by the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the Department of Labor. C, administration. An increase under subparagraph A, 1, shall apply with respect to all contracts covering agricultural commodities that were subject to an increase during the period of the 2011 through 2015 reinsurance years under the enclosure referred to in that subparagraph, and 2, shall not be considered a renegotiation under paragraph 8A. Section 10504, premium support. Section 508E2 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1508E2 is amended, 1, in subparagraph C1 by striking 64 and inserting 69, 2, in subparagraph D1 by striking 59 and inserting 64, 3, in subparagraph E1 by striking 55 and inserting 60, 4, in subparagraph F1 by striking 48 and inserting 51, and 5, in subparagraph G1 by striking 38 and inserting 41. Section 10505, Program Compliance and Integrity. Section 515L2 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1515L2, is amended by striking than and all that follows through the period at the end and inserting the following. Than, A, $4 million for each of fiscal years 2009 through 2025, and B, $6 million for fiscal year 2026 and each subsequent fiscal year. Section 10506, Reviews, Compliance, and Integrity. Section 516B2C1 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1516B2C1, is amended in the matter preceding subclause 1 by striking for each fiscal year and inserting for each of fiscal years 2014 through 2025 and $10 million for fiscal year 2026 and each fiscal year thereafter.
Section 10507, Poultry Insurance Pilot Program. Section 523 of the Federal Crop Insurance Act, 7 U.S.C. 1523, is amended by adding at the end the following. J, Poultry Insurance Pilot Program. 1, in general, notwithstanding subsection A2, the corporation shall establish a pilot program under which contract poultry growers, including growers of broilers and laying hens, may elect to receive index-based insurance from extreme weather-related risk resulting in increased utility costs, including costs of natural gas, propane, electricity, water, and other appropriate costs, as determined by the corporation associated with poultry production. 2, stakeholder engagement. The corporation shall engage with poultry industry stakeholders in establishing the pilot program under paragraph 1. 3, location. The pilot program established under paragraph 1 shall be conducted in a sufficient number of counties to provide a comprehensive evaluation of the feasibility, effectiveness, and demand among producers in the top poultry producing states as determined by the corporation. 4, approval of policy or plan, notwithstanding section 5081. The board shall approve a policy or plan of insurance based on the pilot program under paragraph 1. A, in accordance with section 508H, and B, not later than 2 years after the date of enactment of this subsection. Subtitle F, additional investments in rural America, section 10601, conservation. A, in general, section 1241A of the Food Security Act of 1985, 16 U.S.C. 3841A is amended. 1, in paragraph 2 by striking subparagraphs A through F and inserting the following. A, $625 million for fiscal year 2026. B, $650 million for fiscal year 2027. C, $675 million for fiscal year 2028. D, $700 million for fiscal year 2029. E, $700 million for fiscal year 2030. And F, $700 million for fiscal year 2031, and 2, in paragraph 3A and subparagraph A by striking clauses 1 through 5 and inserting the following. 1, $2,655 million for fiscal year 2026. 2, $2,855 million for fiscal year 2027. 3, $3,255 million for fiscal year 2028. 4, $3,255 million for fiscal year 2029. 5, $3,255 million for fiscal year 2030, and 6, $3,255 million for fiscal year 2031, and B, in subparagraph B by striking clauses 1 through 5 and inserting the following. 1, $1,300 million for fiscal year 2026. 2, $1,325 million for fiscal year 2027. 3, $1,350 million for fiscal year 2028. 4, $1,375 million for fiscal year 2029, 5, $1,375 million for fiscal year 2030, and 6, $1,375 million for fiscal year 2031. B, Regional Conservation Partnership Programs, Section 1271D of the Food Security Act of 1985, 16 U.S.C. 3871D is amended by striking subsection A and inserting the following. A, availability of funding. Of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary shall use to carry out the program to the maximum extent practicable. 1, $425 million for fiscal year 2026. 2, $450 million for fiscal year 2027. 3, $450 million for fiscal year 2028. 4, $450 million for fiscal year 2029. 5, $450 million for fiscal year 2030. And 6, $450 million for fiscal year 2031. C, Grassroots Source Water Protection Programs, Section 1240 OB of the Food Security Act of 1985, 16 U.S.C. 3839 BB. 2B is amended. 1, in paragraph 1 by striking 2023 and inserting 2031, and 2, in paragraph 3A and subparagraph A by striking and at the end. B, in subparagraph B by striking the period at the end and inserting and. C, by adding at the end of the following. C, $1 million beginning in fiscal year 2026 to remain available until expended. D, voluntary public access and habitat incentive programs, Section 1240 RF1 of the Food Security Act of 1985, 16 U.S.C. 3839 BB. 5F1 is amended. 1, by striking 2023 and inserting 2023, and 2, by inserting and $70 million for the period of fiscal years 2025 through 2031 before the period at the end. E, watershed protection and flood prevention. Section 15 of the Watershed Protection and Flood Prevention Act, 16 U.S.C. 1012A is amended by striking $50 million for fiscal year 2019 and each fiscal year thereafter, and inserting $150 million for fiscal year 2026 and each fiscal year thereafter to remain available until expended. F, Feral Swine Eradication and Control Pilot Program, Section 2408 G, 1 of the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, 7 U.S.C. 8351, note, Public Law 115-334 is amended, 1, by striking 2023 and inserting 2023, and 2, by inserting $105 million for the period of fiscal years 2025 through 2031 before the period at the end. G, rescission. The unobligated balances of amounts appropriated by Section 21001A of Public Law 117-169, 136, Stat 2015 are rescinded. Section 10602, Supplemental Agricultural Trade Promotion Program. A, in general, the Secretary of Agriculture shall carry out a program to encourage the accessibility, development, maintenance, and expansion of commercial export markets for United States agricultural commodities. B, funding. Of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary of Agriculture shall make available to carry out this section $205 million for fiscal year 2027 and each fiscal year thereafter. Section 10603, Nutrition. Section 203D, D5 of the Emergency Food Assistance Act of 1983, 7 U.S.C. 7507, D5 is amended by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. Section 10604, Research. A, urban, indoor, and other emerging agricultural programs, production, research, education, and extension initiative. Section 1672 ED1B of the Food, Agricultural, Conservation, and Trade Act of 1990, 7 U.S.C. 5925 GD1B is amended by striking fiscal year 2024 to remain available until expended, and inserting each of fiscal years 2024 through 2031. B, Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research. Section 7601 G1A of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 5939 G1A is amended by adding at the end of the following. 4, further funding not later than 30 days after the date of enactment of this clause of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary shall transfer to the Foundation to carry out this section $37 million to remain available until expended. C, scholarships for students at 1890 institutions, Section 1446B1 of the National Agricultural Research, Extension, and Teaching Policy Act of 1977, 7 U.S.C. 3222AB1 is amended by adding at the end the following. C, further funding of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary shall make available to carry out this section $60 million for fiscal year 2026 to remain available until expended. D, assistive technology program for farmers with disabilities, Section 1680 of the Food, Agricultural, Conservation, and Trade Act of 1997, U.S.C. 5933 is amended, 1 in subsection C2 by inserting and subsection D after paragraph 1, and 2 by adding at the end of the following. D, mandatory funding. Subject to subsection C2 of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary shall use to carry out this section $8 million for fiscal year 2026 to remain available until expended. E, Specialty Crop Research Initiative. Section 412K1B of the Agricultural Research, Extension, and Education Reform Act of 1998, 7 U.S.C. 7632 K1B is amended by striking section $80 million for fiscal year 2014 and inserting the following section. 1, $80 million for each of fiscal years 2014 through 2025, and 2, $175 million for fiscal year 2026. F, Research Facilities Act, Section 6 of the Research Facilities Act, 7 U.S.C. 390D is amended, 1 in subsection C by striking subsection A and inserting subsections A and E, and 2 by adding at the end the following. E, mandatory funding subject to subsections B, C, and D of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation. The Secretary shall make available to carry out the competitive grant program under Section 4, $125 million for fiscal year 2026 and each fiscal year thereafter. Section 10605, Energy, Section 9005 G1F of the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act of 2002, 7 U.S.C. 8105 G1F is amended by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. Section 10606, Horticulture. A, Plant, Pest, and Disease Management and Disaster Prevention, Section 420F of the Plant Protection Act, 7 U.S.C. 7721F is amended, 1 in paragraph 5 by striking and at the end, 2 by redesignating paragraph 6 as paragraph 7, 3 by inserting after paragraph 5 the following. 6, $75 million for each of fiscal years 2018 through 2025, and 4 in paragraph 7 as so redesignated by striking $75 million for fiscal year 2018 and inserting $90 million for fiscal year 2026. B, Specialty Crop Block Grants, Section 10111 of the Specialty Crops Competitiveness Act of 2004, 7 U.S.C. 1621, note, Public Law 108-465 is amended, 1 in subparagraph D by striking and at the end, 2 by redesignating subparagraph E as subparagraph F, 3 by inserting after subparagraph D the following. E, $85 million for each of fiscal years 2018 through 2025 and 4 in subparagraph F as so redesignated by striking $85 million for fiscal year 2018 and inserting $100 million for fiscal year 2026. C, Organic Production and Market Data Initiative, Section 7407 D1 of the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act of 2002, 7 U.S.C. 5925 CD1 is amended, 1 in subparagraph B by striking and at the end, 2 in subparagraph C by striking the period at the end and inserting and by 3 by adding at the end the following. D, $10 million for the period of fiscal years 2026 through 2031. D, modernization and improvement of international trade technology systems and data collection, Section 2123C4 of the Organic Foods Production Act of 1997, U.S.C. 6522C4 is amended in the matter preceding subparagraph A by striking and $1 million for fiscal year 2024 and inserting $1 million for fiscal years 2024 and 2025 and $5 million for fiscal year 2026. E, National Organic Certification Cost Share Program, Section 10606 D1C of the Farm Security and Rural Investment Act of 2002, 7 U.S.C. 6523 D1C is amended by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. F, Multiple Crop and Pesticide Use Survey, Section 10109C of the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, Public Law 115-334, 132, Stat 4907 is amended by adding at the end the following. 3, further mandatory funding of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation. The Secretary shall use to carry out the Section $5 million for fiscal year 2026 to remain available until expended. Section 10607, miscellaneous. A, Animal Disease Prevention and Management. Section 10409 AD1 of the Animal Health Protection Act, 7 U.S.C. 8308 AD1 is amended, 1 in subparagraph B. A, in the heading by striking subsequent fiscal years and inserting fiscal years 2023 through 2025, and B, by striking fiscal year 2023 and each fiscal year thereafter and inserting each of fiscal years 2023 through 2025, and 2, by adding at the end the following. C, fiscal years 2026 through 2030 of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation. The Secretary shall make available to carry out the Section $233 million for each of fiscal years 2026 through 2030, of which 1, not less than $10 million shall be made available for each such fiscal year to carry out subsection A. 2, not less than $70 million shall be made available for each such fiscal year to carry out subsection B. And 3, not less than $153 million shall be made available for each such fiscal year to carry out subsection C. D, subsequent fiscal years. Of the funds of the Commodity Credit Corporation, the Secretary shall make available to carry out the section $75 million for fiscal year 2031, each fiscal year thereafter, of which not less than $45 million shall be made available for each of those fiscal years to carry out subsection B. B, Sheep Production and Marketing Grant Program, Section 209C of the Agricultural Marketing Act of 1946, 7 U.S.C. 1627 AC is amended, 1, by striking 2019 and inserting 2019, and 2, by inserting and $3 million for fiscal year 2026 after fiscal year 2024. The C, Pima Agricultural Cotton Trust Fund, Section 12314 of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 2101, Note, Public Law 113-79 is amended, 1, in subsection B in the matter preceding paragraph 1 by striking 2024 and inserting 2031, and 2 in subsection H by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. D, Agricultural Wool Apparel Manufacturers Trust Fund, Section 12315 of the Agricultural Act 2014, 7 U.S.C. 7101, Note, Public Law 113-79 is amended by striking 2024 each place it appears and inserting 2031. E, Wool Research and Promotion, Section 12316A of the Agricultural Act of 2014, 7 U.S.C. 7101, Note, Public Law 113-79 is amended by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. F, Emergency Citrus Disease Research and Development Trust Fund, Section 12605D of the Agricultural Improvement Act of 2018, 7 U.S.C. 7632, Note, Public Law 115-334 is amended by striking 2024 and inserting 2031. Title II, Committee on Armed Services, Section 20001, Enhancement of Department of Defense Resources for Improving the Quality of Life for Military Personnel. A, appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $230,480,000 for restoration and modernization costs under the Marine Corps Barracks 2030 Initiative. 2, $119 million for base operating support costs under the Marine Corps. 3, $1 billion for Army, Navy, Air Force and Space Force sustainment, restoration, and modernization of military unaccompanied housing. $2 billion for the Defense Health Program. 5, $2.9 billion to supplement the basic allowance for housing payable to members of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force, notwithstanding Section 403 of Title 37 United States Code. 6, $50 million for bonuses, special pays, and incentive pays for members of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force pursuant to Titles 10 and 37 United States Code. 7, $10 million for the defense activity for non-traditional education, supports online academic skills course program for members of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force. 8, $100 million for tuition assistance for members of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force pursuant to Title 10 United States Code. 9, $100 million for child care fee assistance for members of the Army, Air Force, Navy, Marine Corps, and Space Force under Part 2 of Chapter 88 of Title 10 United States Code. 10, $590 million to increase the temporary lodging expense allowance under Chapter 8 of Title 37 United States Code to 21 days. 11, $100 million for Department of Defense impact aid payments to local educational agencies under Section 2008 of Title 10 United States Code. 12, $10 million for military spouse professional licensure under Section 1784 of Title 10 United States Code. 13, $6 million for Armed Forces Retirement Home Facilities. 14, $100 million for the Defense Community Infrastructure Program. 15, $100 million for Defense Advanced Research Projects Agencies, DARPA, Casualty Care Research, and 16, $62 million for modernization of Department of Defense Child Care Center staffing. B, temporary increase in percentage of value of authorized investment in certain privatized military housing projects, 1, in general. During the period beginning on the date of the enactment of this section and ending on September 30th, 2029, the Secretary concerned shall apply. A, paragraph 1 of subsection C of Section 2875 of Title 10 United States Code by substituting 60% of 33 and a third percent, and B, paragraph 2 of such subsection by substituting 60% for 45%. 2, secretary concerned defined. In this subsection, the term secretary concerned has the meaning given such term in Section 101 of Title 10 United States Code. C, temporary authority for acquisition or construction of privatized military unaccompanied housing. Section 2881A of Title 10 United States Code is amended. 1, by striking the heading and inserting temporary authority for acquisition or construction of privatized military unaccompanied housing. 2, by striking Secretary of the Navy each place it appears and inserting secretary concerned. 3, by striking under the pilot projects each place it appears and inserting pursuant to this section. 4, in subsection A, by striking the heading and inserting in general, and B, by striking carry out not more than 3 pilot projects under the authority of this section or another provision of this subchapter to use the private sector, and inserting use the authority under this subchapter to enter into contracts with appropriate private sector entities. 5, in subsection C, by striking privatized housing and inserting privatized housing units. 6, by redesignating subsection F as subsection E, and 7, in subsection E as so redesignated. A, by striking under the pilot programs and inserting under this section, and B, by striking September 30th, 2009 and inserting September 30th, 2029. Section 20002, enhancement of Department of Defense resource for shipbuilding. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $250 million for the expansion of accelerated training and defense manufacturing program. 2, $250 million for United States production of turbine generators for shipbuilding and industrial bases. 3, $450 million for United States additive manufacturing for wire production and machining capacity for shipbuilding and industrial base. 4, $492 million for the next generation shipbuilding techniques. 5, $85 million for United States made steel plate for shipbuilding industrial base. 6, $50 million for machining capacity for naval propellers for shipbuilding industrial base. 7, $110 million for rolled steel and fabrication facility for shipbuilding industrial base. 8, $400 million for expansion of collaborative campus for naval shipbuilding. 9, $450 million for application of autonomy and artificial intelligence to naval shipbuilding. 10, $500 million for the adoption of advanced manufacturing techniques in the shipbuilding industrial base. 11, $500 million for additional dry dock capability. 12, $50 million for the expansion of cold spray repair technologies. 13, $450 million for additional maritime industrial workforce development programs. 14, $750 million for additional supplier development across the naval shipbuilding industrial base. 15, $250 million for additional advanced manufacturing processes across the naval shipbuilding industrial base. 16, $4.6 billion for a second Virginia-class submarine in fiscal year 2026. 17, $5.4 billion for 2 additional guided missile destroyers, DDG ships. 18, $160 million for advanced procurement of landing ship medium. 19, $1,803,941,000 for procurement of landing ship medium. 20, $295 million for development of a second landing craft utility shipyard and production of additional landing craft utility. 21, $100 million for advanced procurement for light replenishment oiler program. 22, $600 million for the lease or purchase of new ships through the National Defense Sea Lift Fund. 23, $2,725 million for the procurement of TAO oilers. 24, $500 million for cost to complete for rescue and salvage ships. 25, $300 million for production of ship-to-shore connectors. 26, $1,470 million for the implementation of a multi-ship amphibious warship contract. 27, $80 million for accelerated development of vertical launch system reloading at sea. 28, $250 million for expansion of Navy corrosion control programs. 29, $159 million for leasing of ships for Marine Corps operations. 30, $1,534 million for expansion of small unmanned surface vessel production. 31, $2,100 million for development, procurement, and integration of purpose-built medium unmanned surface vessels. 32, $1,300 million for expansion of unmanned underwater vehicle production. 33, $188,360,000 for the development of testing of maritime robotic autonomous systems and enabling technologies. 34, $170 million for the development of a test resource management center, robotic autonomous systems proving ground. 35, $250 million for the development, production, and integration of wave-powered unmanned underwater vehicles. And 36, $150 million for retention of inactive reserve fleet ships. Section 20003, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for integrated air and missile defense. A, next-generation missile defense technologies, in addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $250 million for development and testing of directed energy capabilities by the Undersecretary for Research and Engineering. 2, $500 million for national security space launch infrastructure. 3, $2 billion for air-moving target indicator military satellites. 4, $400 million for expansion of multi-service advanced capability hypersonic test bed program. 5, $5.6 billion for development of space-based and boost phase intercept capabilities. 6, $7.2 billion for the development, procurement, and integration of military space-based sensors. And 7, $2.55 billion for the development, procurement, and integration of military missile defense capabilities. B, Laird Homeland Defense. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $2.2 billion for acceleration of hypersonic defense systems. 2, $800 million for accelerated development and deployment of next-generation intercontinental ballistic missile defense systems. 3, $408 million for Army space and strategic missile test range infrastructure restoration and modernization in the United States Indo-Pacific Command Area of Operations west of the international date line. 4, $1.975 billion for improved ground-based missile defense radars. And 5, $530 million for the design and construction of Missile Defense Agency missile instrumental range safety ship. Section 20004, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for munitions and defense supply chain resiliency. A, appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $400 million for the development, production, and integration of Navy and Air Force long-range anti-ship missiles. 2, $380 million for production capacity expansion for Navy and Air Force long-range anti-ship missiles. 3, $490 million for the development, production, and integration of Navy and Air Force long-range air-to-surface missiles. 4, $94 million for the development, production, and integration of alternative Navy and Air Force long-range air-to-surface missiles. 5, $630 million for the development, production, and integration of long-range Navy air defense and anti-ship missiles. 6, $688 million for the development, production, and integration of long-range multi-service cruise missiles. 7, $250 million for the production, capacity expansion, and supplier base strengthening of long-range multi-service cruise missiles. 8, $70 million for the development, production, and integration of short-range Navy and Marine Corps anti-ship missiles. 9, $100 million for the development of an anti-ship seeker for short-range Army ballistic missiles. 10, $175 million for production capacity expansion for next-generation Army medium-range ballistic missiles. 11, $50 million for the mitigation of diminishing manufacturing sources for medium-range air-to-air missiles. 12, $250 million for the procurement of medium-range air-to-air missiles. 13, $225 million for the expansion of production capacity for medium-range air-to-air missiles. 14, $50 million for the development of second sources for components of short-range air-to-air missiles. 15, $325 million for production capacity improvements for air-launched anti-radiation missiles. 16, $50 million for the accelerated development of Army next-generation medium-range anti-ship ballistic missiles. 17, $114 million for the production of Army next-generation medium-range ballistic missiles. 18, $300 million for the production of Army medium-range ballistic missiles. 19, $85 million for the accelerated development of Army long-range ballistic missiles. 20, $400 million for the production of heavyweight torpedoes. 21, $200 million for the development, procurement, and integration of mass-producible autonomous underwater munitions. 22, $70 million for the improvement of heavyweight torpedo maintenance activities. 23, $200 million for the production of lightweight torpedoes. 24, $500 million for the development, procurement, and integration of maritime mines. 25, $50 million for the development, procurement, and integration of new underwater explosives. 26, $55 million for the development, procurement, and integration of lightweight multi-mission torpedoes. 27, $80 million for the production of sono buoys. 28, $150 million for the development, procurement, and integration of air-delivered long-range maritime mines. 29, $61 million for the acceleration of Navy expeditionary loitering munitions deployment. 30, $50 million for the acceleration of one-way attack unmanned aerial systems with advanced autonomy. 31, $1 billion for the expansion of the one-way attack unmanned aerial systems industrial base. 32, $200 million for investments in solid rocket motor industrial base through the Industrial Base Fund established under Section 4817 of Title 10 United States Code. 33, $400 million for investments in the emerging solid rocket motor industrial base through the Industrial Base Fund established under Section 4817 of Title 10 United States Code. 34, $42 million for investments in second sources for large diameter solid rocket motors for hypersonic missiles. 35, $1 billion for the creation of next-generation automated munitions production factories. 36, $170 million for the development of advanced radar depot for repair, testing, and production of radar and electronic warfare systems. 37, $25 million for the expansion of the Department of Defense industrial base policy analysis workforce. 38, $30,300,000 for the repair of Army missiles. 39, $100 million for the production of small and medium ammunition. 40, $2 billion for additional activities to improve the United States stockpile of critical minerals through the National Defense Stockpile Transaction Fund, authorized by Subchapter 3 of Chapter 5 of Title 5 United States Code. 41, $10 million for the expansion of Department of Defense armaments cooperation workforce. 42, $500 million for the expansion of the Defense Exportability Features Program. 43, $350 million for protection of Navy long-range air and missile defense interceptors. 44, $93 million for replacement of Navy long-range air and missile defense interceptors. 45, $100 million for development of a second solid rocket motor source for Navy air defense and anti-ship missiles. 46, $65 million for expansion of production capacity of Missile Defense Agency long-range anti-ballistic missiles. 47, $225 million for expansion of production capacity for Navy air defense and anti-ship missiles. 48, $103,300,000 for expansion of depot-level maintenance facility for Navy long-range air and missile defense interceptors. 49, $18 million for creation of domestic source for guidance section of Navy short-range air defense missiles. 50, $65 million for integration of Army medium-range air and missile defense interceptor with Navy ships. 51, $176,100,000 for production of Army long-range movable missile defense radar. 52, $167 million for accelerated fielding of Army short-range gun-based air and missile defense system. 53, $40 million for development of low-cost alternatives to air and missile defense interceptors. 54, $50 million for acceleration of Army next-generation shoulder-fired air defense system. 55, $91 million for production of Army next-generation shoulder-fired air defense system. 56, $500 million for development, production, and integration of counter-unmanned aerial system programs. 57, $350 million for development, production, and integration of non-kinetic counter-unmanned aerial systems programs. 58, $250 million for development, production, and integration of land-based counter-unmanned aerial systems programs. 59, $200 million for development, production, and integration of ship-based counter-unmanned aerial systems programs. 60, $400 million for acceleration of hypersonic strike programs. 61, $167 million for procurement of additional launchers for Army medium-range air and missile defense interceptors. 62, $500,000 for expansion of defense advanced manufacturing techniques. 63, $1 million for establishment of the Joint Energetics Transition Office. 64, $200 million for acceleration of Army medium-range air and missile defense interceptors. 65, $150 million for additive manufacturing for propellant. 66, $250 million for expansion and acceleration of penetrating munitions production. And 67, $50 million for development, procurement, and integration of precision extended range artillery.
B, appropriation. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, $3.3 billion for grants and purchase commitments made pursuant to the Industrial Base Fund established under Section 4817 of Title 10, United States Code. C, appropriation. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, $5 billion for investments in critical mineral supply chains made pursuant to the Industrial Base Fund established under Section 4817 of Title 10, United States Code. D, appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Secretary of Defense out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, $500 million to the Department of Defense Credit Program account to carry out the Capital Assistance Program, including loans, loan guarantees, and technical assistance established under Section 149E of Title 10, United States Code for critical minerals and related industries and projects, including related covered technology categories, provided that 1, such amounts are available to subsidize gross obligations for the principal amount of direct loans and total loan principal, any part of which is to be guaranteed, not to exceed $100 billion, and 2, such amounts are available to cover all costs and expenditures as provided under Section 149E5B of Title 10, United States Code. Section 20005, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for scaling low-cost weapons into production. A, appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, 1, $25 million for the Office of Strategic Capital Global Technology Scout Program, 2, $1.4 billion for the expansion of the Small Unmanned Aerial System Industrial Base, 3, $400 million for the development and deployment of the Joint Fires Network and associated joint battle management capabilities, 4, $400 million for the expansion of advanced command and control tools to combatant commands and military departments, 5, $100 million for the development of shared secured facilities for the Defense Industrial Base, 6, $50 million for the creation of additional Defense Innovation Unit on-ramp hubs, 7, $600 million for the acceleration of strategic capabilities office programs, 8, $650 million for the expansion of mission capabilities office joint prototyping and experimentation activities for military innovation, 9, $500 million for the accelerated development and integration of advanced 5G, 6G technologies for military use, 10, $25 million for testing of simultaneous transmit and receive technology for military spectrum agility, 11, $50 million for the development, procurement, and integration of high-altitude stratospheric balloons for military use, 12, $120 million for the development, procurement, and integration of long-endurance unmanned aerial systems for surveillance, 13, $40 million for the development, procurement, and integration of alternative positioning and navigation technology to enable military operations in contested electromagnetic environments, 14, $750 million for the acceleration of innovative military logistics and energy capability development and deployment, 15, $125 million for the acceleration of development of small, portable, modular nuclear reactors for military use, 16, $1 billion for the expansion of programs to accelerate the procurement and fielding of innovative technologies. 17, $90 million for the development of reusable hypersonic technology for military strikes. 18, $2 billion for the expansion of Defense Innovation Unit ceiling of commercial technology for military use. 19, $500 million to prevent delays in delivery of attributable autonomous military capabilities. 20, $1.5 billion for the development, procurement, and integration of low-cost cruise missiles. 21, $124 million for improvements to Test Resource Management Center artificial intelligence capabilities. 22, $145 million for the development of artificial intelligence to enable one-way attack, unmanned aerial systems, and naval systems. 23, $250 million for the development of the Test Resource Management Center digital test environment. 24, $250 million for the advancement of the artificial intelligence ecosystem. 25, $250 million for the expansion of Cyber Command artificial intelligence lines of effort. 26, $250 million for the acceleration of the quantum benchmarking initiative. 27, $1 billion for the expansion and acceleration of qualification activities and technical data management to enhance competition in defense industrial base. 28, $400 million for the expansion of the Defense Manufacturing Technology Program. 29, $1,685 million for military cryptographic modernization activities. 30, $90 million for Apex accelerators, the Mentor Protege program, and cybersecurity support to small non-traditional contractors. 31, $250 million for the development, procurement, and integration of Air Force low-cost counter-air capabilities. 32, $10 million for additional Air Force wargaming activities. And 33, $20 million for the Office of Strategic Capital Workforce. B, appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, $1 billion to the Department of Defense Credit Program account to carry out the Capital Assistance Program, including loans, loan guarantees, and technical assistance established under Section 149E of Title 10 U.S. Code, provided that 1, such amounts are available to subsidize gross obligations for the principal amount of direct loans and total loan principal, any part of which is to be guaranteed not to exceed $100 billion, and 2, such amounts are available to cover all costs and expenditures as provided under Section 149E5B of Title 10 U.S. Code. Section 20006, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for improving the efficiency and cybersecurity of the Department of Defense. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $150 million for business systems replacement to accelerate the audits of the financial statements of the Department of Defense pursuant to Chapter 9A and Section 2222 of Title 10 U.S. Code. 2, $200 million for the deployment of automation and artificial intelligence to accelerate the audits of the financial statements of the Department of Defense pursuant to Chapter 9A and Section 2222 of Title 10 United States Code. 3, $10 million for the improvement of the budgetary and programmatic infrastructure of the Office of the Secretary of Defense. And 4, $20 million for defense cybersecurity programs of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency. Section 20007, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for air superiority. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $3,150 million to increase F-15 aircraft production. 2, $361,220,000 to prevent the retirement of F-22 aircraft. 3, $127,460,000 to prevent the retirement of F-15E aircraft. 4, $187 million to accelerate installation of F-16 electronic warfare capability. 5, $116 million for C-17A mobility aircraft connectivity. 6, $84 million for KC-135 mobility aircraft connectivity. 7, $440 million to increase C-130J production. 8, $474 million to increase EA-37B production. 9, $678 million to accelerate the Collaborative Combat Aircraft Program. 10, $400 million to accelerate production of the F-47 aircraft. 11, $750 million to accelerate the F/A-XX aircraft. 12, $100 million for production of advanced aerial sensors. 13, $160 million to accelerate V-22 reliability and safety improvements. 14, $100 million to accelerate production of MQ-25 aircraft. 15, $270 million for development, procurement, and integration of Marine Corps unmanned combat aircraft. 16, $96 million for the procurement and integration of infrared search and track pods. 17, $50 million for the procurement and integration of additional F-15EX fuel tanks. 18, $600 million for the development, procurement, and integration of Air Force long-range strike aircraft. 19, $500 million for the development, procurement, and integration of Navy long-range strike aircraft. Section 20008, Enhancement of Resources for Nuclear Forces. A, DoD appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $2.5 billion for risk reduction activities for the Sentinel Intercontinental Ballistic Missile Program. 2, $4.5 billion only for expansion of production capability of B-21 long-range bomber aircraft and the purchase of aircraft only available through the expansion of production capabilities. 3, $500 million for improvements to the Minuteman III intercontinental ballistic missile system. 4, $100 million for capability enhancements to intercontinental ballistic missile reentry vehicles. 5, $148 million for the expansion of D5 missile motor production. 6, $400 million to accelerate the development of Trident D5 LE-2 submarine-launched ballistic missiles. 7, $2 billion to accelerate the development, procurement, and integration of the nuclear-armed sea-launched cruise missile. 8, $62 million to convert Ohio-class submarine tubes to accept additional missiles not to be obligated before March 1st, 2026. 9, $168 million to accelerate the production of the Survivable Airborne Operations Center program. 10, $65 million to accelerate the modernization of nuclear command, control, and communications. 11, $210,300,000 for the increased production of MH-139 helicopters. And 12, $150 million to accelerate the development, procurement, and integration of military nuclear weapons delivery programs. B, NNSA appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $200 million to perform National Nuclear Security Administration Phase 1 studies pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 2, $540 million to address deferred maintenance and repair needs of the National Nuclear Security Administration pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 3, $1 billion to accelerate the construction of National Nuclear Security Administration facilities pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 4, $400 million to accelerate the development, procurement, and integration of the warhead for the nuclear-armed, sea-launched cruise missile pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 5, $750 million to accelerate primary capability modernization pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 6, $750 million to accelerate secondary capability modernization pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 7, $120 million to accelerate domestic uranium enrichment centrifuge deployment for defense purposes pursuant to Section 3211 of the National Nuclear Security Administration Act, 50 U.S.C. 2401. 8, $10 million for National Nuclear Security Administration evaluation of spent fuel reprocessing technology. And 9, $115 million for accelerating nuclear national security missions through artificial intelligence. Section 20009, enhancement of Department of Defense resources to improve capabilities of the United States Indo-Pacific Command. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $365 million for Army exercises and operations in the Western Pacific area of operations. 2, $53 million for special operations command exercises and operations in the Western Pacific area of operations. 3, $47 million for Marine Corps exercises and operations in Western Pacific area of operations. 4, $90 million for Air Force exercises and operations in Western Pacific area of operations. 5, $532,600,000 for the Pacific Air Force biennial large-scale exercise. 6, $19 million for the development of naval small craft capabilities. 7, $35 million for military additive manufacturing capabilities in the United States Indo-Pacific Command Area of Operations west of the International Date Line. 8, $450 million for the development of airfields within the area of operations of the United States Indo-Pacific Command. 9, $1,100 million for development of infrastructure within the area of operations of United States Indo-Pacific Command. 10, $124 million for mission networks for United States Indo-Pacific Command. 11, $100 million for the Air Force regionally based cluster preposition base kits. 12, $115 million for exploration and development of existing Arctic infrastructure. 13, $90 million for the accelerated development of non-kinetic capabilities. 14, $20 million for United States Indo-Pacific Command military exercises. 15, $143 million for anti-submarine sonar arrays. 16, $30 million for surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities for United States Africa Command. 17, $30 million for surveillance and reconnaissance capabilities for United States Indo-Pacific Command. 18, $500 million for the development, coordination, and deployment of economic competition effects within the Department of Defense. 19, $10 million for the expansion of Department of Defense workforce for economic competition. 20, $1 billion for offensive cyber operations. 21, $500 million for personnel and operations costs associated with forces assigned to United States Indo-Pacific Command. 22, $300 million for the procurement of mesh network communications capabilities for Special Operations Command Pacific. 23, $850 million for the replenishment of military articles. 24, $200 million for the acceleration of Guam Defense System Program. 25, $68 million for the Space Force facilities improvements. 26, $150 million for ground moving target indicator military satellites. 27, $528 million for DARC and Silent Barker military space situational awareness programs. 28, $80 million for Navy Operational Support Division. 29, $1 billion for the X-37B military spacecraft program. 30, $3,650 million for the development, procurement, and integration of United States military satellites and the protection of United States military satellites. 31, $125 million for the deployment, procurement, and integration of military space communications. 32, $350 million for the development, procurement, and integration of military space command and control systems. Section 20010, enhancement of Department of Defense resources for improving the readiness of the Department of Defense. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029. 1, $1,400 million for a pilot program on OPN-8 maritime spares and repair pool. 2, $700 million for a pilot program on OPN-8 maritime spares and repair pool for amphibious ships. 3, $2,118 million for spares and repairs to keep Air Force aircraft mission capable. 4, $1,500 million for Army depot modernization and capacity enhancement. 5, $2 billion for Navy depot and shipyard modernization and capacity enhancement. 6, $250 million for Air Force depot modernization and capacity enhancement. 7, $1,640 million for special operations command equipment, readiness and operations. 8, $500 million for National Guard unit readiness. 9, $400 million for Marine Corps readiness and capabilities. 10, $20 million for upgrades to Marine Corps utility helicopters. 11, $310 million for next-generation vertical lift, assault, and infrastructure acro-medical evacuation aircraft. 12, $75 million for the procurement of anti-lock braking systems for the Army wheeled transport vehicles. 13, $230 million for the procurement of Army wheeled combat vehicles. 14, $63 million for the development of advanced rotary wing engines. 15, $241 million for the development, procurement, and integration of Marine Corps amphibious vehicles. 16, $250 million for the procurement of Army-tracked combat transport vehicles. 17, $98 million for additional advanced Army light rotary wing capabilities. 18, $1,500 million for increased depot maintenance and shipyard maintenance activities. 19, $2,500 million for Air Force facilities sustainment, restoration, and modernization. 20, $92,500,000 for the completion of robotic combat vehicle prototyping. 21, $125 million for Army operations. 22, $10 million for the Air Force Concepts Development and Management Office. And 23, $320 million for Joint Special Operations Command. Section 20011, improving Department of Defense border support and countering drug missions. In addition to amounts otherwise available, they are appropriated to the Secretary of Defense for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated to remain available until September 30th, 2029, $1 billion for the deployment of military personnel in support of border operations, operations and maintenance activities in support of border operations, counter-narcotics and counter-transnational criminal organization mission support, the operation of national defense areas and construction in national defense areas, and the temporary detention of migrants on Department of Defense installations in accordance with Chapter 15 of Title 10, United States Code. Section 20012, Department of Defense Oversight. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Inspector General of the Department of Defense for fiscal year 2025, out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $10 million to remain available through September 30th, 2029, to monitor Department of Defense activities for which funding is appropriated in this title, including 1, programs with mutual technological dependencies, 2, programs with related data management and data ownership considerations, and 3, programs particularly vulnerable to supply chain disruptions and long lead time components. Section 20013, military construction projects authorized. A, authorization of appropriations. Funds are hereby authorized to be appropriated for military construction, land acquisition, and military family housing functions of each military department as defined in Section 101A of Title 10, United States Code, as specified in this title. B, spending plan. Not later than 30 days after the date of the enactment of this title, the Secretary of each military department shall submit to the Committees on Armed Services of the Senate and House of Representatives a detailed spending plan by project for all funds made available by this title to be expended on military construction projects. Section 20014, multi-year operational plan. A, in general, not later than 60 days after the date of the enactment of this act, the Secretary of Defense and the Administrator of the National Nuclear Security Administration shall submit to the Committees on Armed Services of the Senate and the House of Representatives a plan detailing how the funds appropriated to the Department of Defense and the National Nuclear Security Administration under the Act will be spent over the 4-year period ending with fiscal year 2029. B, quarterly updates. 1, in general, not later than the last day of each calendar quarter beginning during the applicable period, the Secretary of Defense shall submit to the Committees on Armed Services of the Senate and the House of Representatives a report on the plan established under subsection A, including A, any updates to the plan, B, progress made in implementing the plan, and C, any changes in circumstances or challenges in implementing the plan. 2, applicable period. For purposes of paragraph 1, the applicable period is the period beginning 1 year after the date of the plan required under subsection A is due and ending on September 30th, 2029. C, reduction in appropriation. 1, in general, in the case of any failure to submit a plan required under subsection A or the report required under subsection B by the date specified in paragraph 2, the amounts made available to the Department of Defense under this act shall be reduced by $100,000 for each day after such specified date that the report has not been submitted to Congress. 2, specified date. For purposes of the reduction in appropriations under paragraph 1, the specified date is the date that is 60 days after the date the plan or report is required to be submitted under subsection A or B, as the case may be. Title 3, Committee on Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs. Section 30001, funding cap for the Bureau of Consumer Financial Protection. Section 1017A2A3 of the Consumer Financial Protection Act 2010, 12 U.S.C. 5497A2A3 is amended by striking 12 and inserting 6.5. Section 30002, rescission of funds for green and resilient retrofit program for multifamily housing. The unobligated balances of amounts made available under Section 30002A of the Act entitled An Act to Provide for Reconciliation pursuant to Title II of S. Con. Res. 14, approved August 16, 2022, Public Law 117, 169, 136, Statute 2027, are rescinded. Section 30003, Securities and Exchange Commission Reserve Fund. A, in general, Section 4 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, 15 U.S.C. 78D is amended, 1, by striking subsection 1, and 2, by redesignating subsections J and K as subsections I and J, respectively. B, technical and conforming amendment. Section 21FG2 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, 15 U.S.C. 78UG 6.2 is amended to read as follows. A, use of fund. The fund shall be available to the Commission without further appropriation or fiscal year limitation for paying awards to whistleblowers as provided in subsection B. C, transition provision. During the period beginning on the date of enactment of this Act and ending on October 1st, 2025, the Securities and Exchange Commission may expend amounts in the Securities and Exchange Commission Reserve Fund that were obligated before the date of enactment of this Act for any program, project, or activity that is ongoing as of the day before the date of enactment of this Act, in accordance with subsection 1 of subsection 4 of the Securities Exchange Act of 1934, 15 U.S.C. 78D, as in effect on the day before the date of enactment of this Act. D, transfer of remaining amounts. Effective on October 1st, 2025, the obligated and unobligated balances of amounts in the Securities and Exchange Commission Reserve Fund shall be transferred to the General Fund of the Treasury. E, closing of account. For the purposes of Section 1555 of Title 31, United States Code, the Securities and Exchange Commission Reserve Fund shall be considered closed and thereafter shall not be available for obligation or expenditure for any purpose upon execution of the transfer required under subsection D. Section 30004, Appropriations for Defense Production Act. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated for fiscal year 2025, out of amounts not otherwise appropriated, $1 billion to remain available until September 30th, 2027, to carry out the Defense Production Act, 50 U.S.C. 4501. Title IV, Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation.
Section 40001, Coast Guard Mission Readiness. A, in general, Chapter 11 of Title 14 United States Code is amended by adding at the end the following. Subchapter 5, Coast Guard Mission Readiness. Section 1181, Special Appropriations. In addition to amounts otherwise available, there is appropriated to the Coast Guard for fiscal year 2025 out of any money in the Treasury not otherwise appropriated, $24,593,500,000,000 to remain available until September 30th, 2029, notwithstanding paragraphs 1 and 2 of Section 1105A and Sections 1131, 1132, 1133, and 1156 to use expedited processes to procure or acquire new operational assets and systems, to maintain existing assets and systems, to design, construct, plan, engineer, and improve necessary shore infrastructure, and to enhance operational resilience for monitoring, search and rescue, interdiction, hardening of maritime approaches, and navigational safety, of which $1,142,500,000,000 is provided for procurement and acquisition of fixed-wing aircraft, equipment related to such aircraft and training simulators, and program management for such aircraft to provide for security of the maritime border. $2,283,000,000,000 is provided for procurement and acquisition of rotary wing aircraft, equipment related to such aircraft and training simulators, and program management for such aircraft to provide for security of the maritime border. 3, $266 billion is provided for procurement and acquisition of long-range unmanned aircraft and base stations, equipment related to such aircraft and base stations, and program management for such aircraft and base stations to provide for security of the maritime border. 4, $4,300,000,000,000 is provided for procurement of offshore patrol cutters, equipment related to such cutters, and program management for such cutters to provide operational presence and security of the maritime border for the interdiction of persons and controlled substances. 5, $1 trillion is provided for procurement of fast response cutters, equipment related to such cutters, and program management for such cutters to provide operational presence and security of the maritime border for interdiction of persons and controlled substances. 6, $4,300,000,000,000 is provided for procurement of polar security cutters, equipment related to such cutters, and program management for such cutters to ensure timely presence of the Coast Guard in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. 7, $3,500,000,000 is provided for procurement of Arctic security cutters, equipment related to such cutters, and program management for such cutters to ensure timely presence of the Coast Guard in the Arctic and Antarctic regions. 8, $816 billion is provided for procurement of light and medium ice-breaking cutters and equipment related to such cutters from shipyards that have demonstrated success in the cost-effective application of design standards and in delivering on schedule and within budget vessels of size and tonnage that are not less than the size and tonnage of the cutters described in this paragraph, and for program management for such cutters to expend domestic icebreaking capacity. 9, $126 billion is provided for procurement of waterways, commerce cutters, equipment related to such cutters, and program management for such cutters to support aids to navigation, waterways, and coastal security, and to search and rescue in inland waterways. 10, $4,379 billion is provided for design, planning, engineering, recapitalization, construction, rebuilding, and improvement of, and program management for shore facilities, of which A, $425 billion is provided for design, planning, engineering, construction of, and program management for 1, the enlisted boot camp barracks and multi-use training center, and 2, other related facilities at the enlisted boot camp. B, $500 billion is provided for 1, construction, improvement, and dredging of the Coast Guard yard, and 2, acquisition of a floating dry dock for the Coast Guard yard. C, not more than $2,729,500 million is provided for home ports and hangars for cutters and aircraft for which funds are appropriated under paragraph 1 through 9, and D, $300 billion is provided for home porting of the existing polar icebreaker commissioned into service in 2025. 11, $2,200 billion is provided for aviation cutter and shore facility depot maintenance and maintenance of command, control, communication, computer, and cyber assets. 12, $170 billion is provided for improving maritime domain awareness on the maritime border at United States ports and land-based facilities and in the cyber domain. And 13, $75 billion is provided to contract the services of acquire or procure autonomous maritime systems. B, technical and conforming amendment. The analysis for Chapter 11 of Title 14 United States Code is amended by adding at the end the following. Subchapter 5, Coast Guard Mission Readiness, 1181, Special Appropriations. Section 4002, Spectrum Auctions. A, definitions. In this section, 1, Assistant Secretary. The term Assistant Secretary means the Assistant Secretary of Commerce for Communications and Information. 2, Commission. The term Commission means the Federal Communications Commission. 3, Covered band. The term covered band, A, except as provided in subparagraph B, means the band of frequencies between 1.3 gigahertz and 10.5 gigahertz, and B, does not include 1, the band of frequencies between 3.1 gigahertz and 3.45 gigahertz for purpose of auction, reallocation, modification, or withdrawal, or 2, the band of frequencies between 7.4 gigahertz and 8.4 gigahertz for purpose of auction, reallocation, modification, or withdrawal. 4, full power commercial licensed use cases. The term full power commercial licensed use cases means flexible use wireless broadband services with base station power levels sufficient for high power, high density, and wide area communication mobile services consistent with the service rules under Part 27 of Title 47, Code of Federal Regulations, or any successor regulations for wireless broadband deployment through the covered band. B, general auction authority. 1, amendment. Section 309(1)11 of the Communications Act of 1934, 47 U.S. Code 309(1)11 is amended by striking, grant a license or permit under this subsection shall expire March 9, 2023, and all that follows, and inserting the following, complete a system of competitive bidding under this subsection shall expire September 30th, 2034, except that with respect to the electromagnetic spectrum, A, between frequencies of 3.1 gigahertz and 3.45 gigahertz, such authority shall not apply. and B, the frequencies of 7.1, 7.4 gigahertz, and 8.4 gigahertz, such authority shall not apply. 2, spectrum auctions. The Commission shall grant licenses through systems of competitive bidding before the expiration of the general auction authority of the Commission under Section 309(1)11 of the Communications Act of 1934, 47 U.S.C. 309(1)11 as amended by paragraph 1 of this subsection for not less than 300 megahertz, including by completing a system of competitive bidding not later than 2 years after the date of enactment of this act for not less than 100 megahertz in the band between 3.9 gigahertz and 4.2 gigahertz. C, identification for reallocation. In general, the Assistant Secretary, in consultation with the Commission, shall identify 500 megahertz of frequencies in the covered band for reallocation to non-federal use, shared federal and non-federal use, or a combination thereof, for full power commercial licensed use cases that, A, as of the date of enactment of this act are allocated for federal use, and B, shall be in addition to the 300 megahertz of frequencies for which the